Hello, everyone. We're just going to give a few seconds here for the participants to populate into the webinar. Fantastic. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today. Welcome to our live threat briefing around the LockBit takedown that occurred on Monday. I'm Maggie McDaniel. I'm the head of intelligence at Recorded Future, and I'm joined today by our senior security architect, Alan Liska, director of product management, Dimitri Smiljanets, and Alexander Leslie, our threat intelligence analyst today. We're going to be discussing the history of the LockBit ransomware gang as one of the most prolific groups that we followed, the success of Operation Cronos and how it occurred, and then the forward-looking impact of this on the overall ransomware market and ecosystem. Please feel free to submit questions throughout. I can see those. We'll address them at the end of the discussion. And with that, we'll turn it over to the team here. And I think what I want to do is actually start with a question around what we've seen over the last 24 hours. This takedown was Monday. There's a whole lot of what feels like chaos and flurry around what's real, what's not real, and the discussions that are happening. So I will turn it over to y'all to kick off there, and then we can get into the deck. Does that work? Fantastic.
That works. So as with any kind of major news story, there's been a whole lot of fake news that's gone around since the takedown. Now, some of it is just memes. I know our friend Azim released a really funny note from LockBit to the affiliates that unfortunately got picked up by a couple of news sources, but it was hilarious. But there actually, and Alex, I know you have some insight into this, there actually has been a lot of what I'd call deceptive practices, I guess, that taking advantage of this news vacuum.
Yeah, I mean, if we've learned anything over the last 24 hours, especially when we're dealing with developing scenarios, all I would say is patience, right? Patience and restraint when making analysis, when making logical leaps in terms of what is happening with an ongoing situation. We've seen a lot of misinformation on social media, particularly around how the takedown occurred, what is happening behind the scenes right now, what LockBit is doing. We've seen a lot of misinformation reporting on scammers, right? Like something that's proliferated a lot over the last 24 hours is false LockBit personas on social media, on Telegram, soliciting Bitcoin donations for former affiliates, which we know is just not true, right? And this is being spread by researchers, by observers, by people that maybe don't understand fully how the takedown occurred, how LockBit operates, how the Russian-speaking cybercriminal underground operates. So the bottom line up front, really, if we've learned anything over the last 24 hours, is this is a power vacuum. This is a developing situation. Patience and restraint in reporting and making analysis is like really, really important, especially when we're dealing with potential fake news.
And to bring this analysis, we need to rely on what happened in the past when LockBit appeared on the scene. Why LockBit is so serious threat? And currently, I believe that LockBit is in a full damage control. They're trying to assess what really happened to them, how they can move forward, what path they're going to choose, recover, because he put on Talks Messenger the status that they're trying to recover. But I doubt it's possible to even recover from this. But nevertheless, I would propose we start from some historical assessments, and let me try to show you first slide. And we Recorded Future, we noticed LockBit variant in January 2020. As soon as they made that post on Forum XSS forum exploit that advertised a new ransomware as a service, we started following this new group. And they came on a scene with knowledge. So it immediately sparked interest, further interest in this group, because they were not amateur criminals. There was a very knowledgeable persona under LockBit sub who organized, who created this new ransomware scene, boosted by leak site, boosted by double threats, extortion, and then all kind of new techniques. So we went further. We interviewed the guy, and you know what's most interesting was when I asked LockBit in 2021 October, aren't you afraid that law enforcement's looking at you, and aren't you afraid that they will take an action and try to hunt forward, try to attack your infrastructure, to disrupt your criminal activities? And you know what? He admitted during that interview, and that's my favorite quote, like, yes, if federal law enforcement uses 0-day, that's the best way to deal with us. And it looks like my interviews were read by appropriate law enforcement agencies who took an action exactly this way, using that 0-day to disrupt their activities, to get inside to the core of LockBit infrastructure, pull all the data. And we're going to discuss this in a minute, but I would really like to highlight that interview. And he kind of predestined his fate with that statement, and I really love it. So let's look at LockBit as a whole. We identified over 2,300 public victims. So that's not all. There are some victims who prefer to pay ransom in private, and there is no visibility into such. I truly believe, because law enforcement now has access to all infrastructure, they'll see the true number and they will share with us eventually. But we observed today more than 2,300 victims claimed through the threats, through the blog posts and file leaks. As you can see on the screen, majority of victims come from the United States. That's very unfortunate for US residents and citizens, because LockBit disrupts everything, all kind of industries involving manufacturing, education, construction, law, and healthcare. And you know what really bothers me was, during the interview, LockBit presented to the world that they never attack healthcare providers. And I thought that it's a decency, human decency. Unfortunately, it was a lie. Like a lot of things that LockBit said was a lie. I want to believe that because of these attacks on healthcare industry, law enforcement partners took an action and disrupted their activities. It was the red line, the human decency line. If you look at the Recorded Future portal, we have more than 10 million references around LockBit. And this is everything. We collect human intelligence, we collect malware intelligence, network intelligence, identity intelligence. All these pieces come into this picture of what is LockBit. We wrote up 2,800 INSIG group nodes, and INSIG group nodes are the human intelligence curated by the best analysts in the world. We produced more than 1,000 technical links and Yara rules, Sigma rules, all kind of intelligence that can proactively prevent your organization from LockBit infections. So all this together, we present as a ransomware solution that comes from Recorded Future. And on this note, I would like to pass microphone to my colleagues.
Yeah, I'll take this from here on out. So we're going to do a brief overview of Operation Cronos. On Monday, February 19th, which also was a holiday in the United States, everyone's phone started blowing up. Every ransomware researcher started to get DMs on social media, on Slack. They started getting text messages that there were rumors circulating of some kind of announcement, some kind of impending action. And lo and behold, the LockBit extortion blog was replaced with a seizure banner having all of those emblems of law enforcement agencies located around the world. Now, at 11:30 GMT on Tuesday, yesterday, February 20th, which was 5:30 a.m. Central Time, my time, I half asleep logged on to the LockBit extortion blog and was able to see that a mock LockBit extortion blog with all of its posts, its countdown timers, had been replaced by a law enforcement controlled resource panel. So Dimitri, if you can go to the next slide, that would be great. If you logged into the LockBit extortion blog yesterday, this is what you saw. The site now being under the control of the UK, the US, and the Operation Cronos task force, which, by the way, is an awesome operation name. Not enough people are talking about how cool Cronos is. I've seen a lot of cool interpretations. My personal favorite is Cronos is the personification of time. LockBit is really known for their countdown timers. We got countdown timers here on the blog. Whether this is law enforcement saying that time's up to LockBit or that law enforcement action was only a matter of time is up to your interpretation, but I really love it. Let's get more of it.
Alex, I hate to disagree with your analysis, but I personally like the interpretation that Kronos is the god of castration, and that's the one that I'm hoping for is the reason it's named after.
Different strokes, with different interpretations, but I love it. Yeah, so this is what you logged into. This law enforcement portal had everything. It had press releases, information about decryption keys, the decryption recovery tool that was released by the Japanese police, indictments, sanctions, you name it, most of which that had countdown timers as of yesterday, saying that over the next few hours, the next few days, law enforcement was going to release more information. But to kind of understand the scale of Operation Cronos, we need to kind of look at the pure numbers of what it accomplished. So next slide. It's pretty comprehensive. It's pretty crazy. Terms I've heard is things like complete dismantlement of LockBit, debilitating, unprecedented, sweeping. Just look at these numbers and kind of walk through why Operation Cronos is such a significant event in terms of cybercrime. So these numbers are right from Europol. 34 servers seized in 8 countries. 2 LockBit affiliates were arrested in Poland and Ukraine at the request of French authorities. You can make an inference there that if the French were requesting arrests, these affiliates were likely involved in an attack on an entity located within French jurisdiction. 3 arrest warrants and 5 indictments were issued, including here in the United States, 2 of which were issued, one for Bastard. If you're interested more in Bastard and the National Hazard Agency, click here by Recorded Future News, has a great podcast. I highly recommend listening to that one. 200 cryptocurrency accounts were frozen related to LockBit actors. Information on that will be coming out, I believe, tomorrow, if not Friday. 14,000 rogue accounts responsible for exfiltration or infrastructure were closed. Information on that is coming out tomorrow. And naturally, decryption tool was released. 1,000 decryption keys were obtained because law enforcement has access to the back end, to all of the affiliate panels. We have sanctions, like I mentioned earlier, on those 2 actors that the US announced. They disrupted the bespoke tool, SteelBit, the bespoke exfiltration tool. So all of those servers associated with SteelBit were shut down, which was confirmed this morning, and much more to come. This is a developing situation. We don't really know the full scope and scale of this operation, how many countries were actually involved, if there will be more arrests, if there will be more disclosures, if these numbers are the end of it. We don't really know. It will develop over the next couple of hours, days, weeks, and even months, as this is a long-term operation. Law enforcement's in possession of a lot of data, a lot of intelligence. What they're going to do with that really depends on kind of the disclosure process as we move forward, and if there are any developments in the case. So next slide. A few things that I wanted to highlight really quickly. Naturally, we know that law enforcement has access to LockBit backend. This is one of the posts on the mock LockBit extortion blog for Operation Cronos. That shows, obviously, that they, like Dimitri alluded to earlier, have access to victim negotiation chats. They have access to affiliate panels. They can see which users have been registered. Next slide. This was announced this morning. StealBit, which is the bespoke exfiltration tool that LockBit affiliates use to exfiltrate data and then send it to a StealBit server or to an affiliate-controlled infrastructure, then to the StealBit server, then get published on the LockBit blog. This was disrupted this morning. It was confirmed. So all StealBit servers have been taken offline. Very important, as this was a bespoke tool used by practically all of the affiliates to upload leaked data. That's really important that it was taken off. And next slide. The last thing I'd like to highlight is just confirmation that law enforcement is aware of all of the affiliate accounts registered to affiliate panels and in the LockBit backend. This was published this morning. Now, naturally, some hesitation with these names of affiliates. These are purportedly the names of affiliate accounts that are associated with LockBit. These are all placeholder names. They're generic names associated with accounts. That's really important to note. Don't go running off to exploit XSS ramp trying to look for Dwayne, right? You're not going to find him. Trust me. So, another thing to note, this is making the rounds. This is really just affiliates for the LockBit 3.0 era. So look at the dates that are on this image. We see starting on, of course, January 31st, 2022, but most of the accounts were registered on June 25th, 2022, which is when LockBit 3.0 was released. So all of these accounts that are holdovers, you can see from the left side moving to the right, from June 5th, 2022 onwards are likely holdovers from LockBit 2.0 and LockBit 1.0 that were then transferred to LockBit 3.0 infrastructure, and everyone else up until February 5th, 2024. That poor affiliate likely got a panel, likely paid a deposit, and now it can't do any work, which is pretty funny. Sorry, affiliate sailor. So
Alex, let me ask you this question.
Yep.
What do you think law enforcement will do next, having access to nicknames, chats, Bitcoin wallets, IP addresses, some private information, plus victims? I personally think it's going to be hundreds of new cases behind the scenes.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. What you're seeing right here, and this is, again, just the LockBit 3.0 era. This is just the accounts, right? This is not the affiliate crews, right? Say that there's an affiliate crew with 10 people in it, right? This doesn't represent all of that. 187 unique accounts that now are all independent, unique cases, right? All of these are going to be investigated. We saw some disgruntled affiliates on social media. Whether or not we can corroborate that is not for us to say at the moment, but some disgruntled affiliates on social media claiming that law enforcement was talking to them via the negotiation chat, saying that they claimed to know IP addresses, their actual names, that they were disgruntled about being scammed by LockBit, but also the fact that it was so vulnerable that affiliates now basically have exposed all their personal information to law enforcement. As I said earlier, this is a treasure trove of intelligence for law enforcement and intelligence agencies around the world. There's going to be a lot of intelligence sharing. There's probably going to be a lot of intelligence sharing with the private sector, given the public-private partnership and the relationships that law enforcement has developed. These are all new cases. There really is no end from here until all of these individuals are investigated and, there's a judgment made as to whether or not they committed serious crimes on behalf of LockBit. So next slide. And I'll let Alan take it from here.
Before I go on, Alex and Dimitri, I'd love to get your thoughts on this. So in the last year-ish, we've seen a major Hive takedown. We've seen the major Alpha V takedown. And just last week we had, or 2 weeks ago, we had the Australia with the Metabank attacker. They basically named everything but what he had for lunch that day. And then we had the scattered spider arrest. What do you think law enforcement has learned from these earlier takedowns, and how do you think that that informed what happened with this LockBit takedown?
I can go first. So the disruptive capacity of these operations that have been proven over the last couple of months, last couple of years, really, is the culmination of investigations that are years in the process, right? These investigations likely started years ago. They have likely been developing their interagency efforts, their international efforts. The disruptive capacity of these, given how public-facing ransomware as a service is really important, because we see Hive go down and we see then the fallout on XSS and exploit. We see, law enforcement action taken against Alpha, Black Cat, and then claiming to unseize their blog, and then all of the drama that happens on the forums after that. These, individuals, these affiliates, not only do they maintain public-facing ransomware blogs, but they also maintain public-facing personas on forums, on social media. They engage with researchers and journalists. The comprehensive nature of the LockBit takedown really kind of brings together everything learned from the past. This isn't just we're seizing the Tor site. This is we're seizing the Tor site, we're making arrests, we're sanctioning, we're doing it all at once. This is not necessarily something we've seen in the past, where we've seen a comprehensive approach that law enforcement is pulling every single lever available to them. That's kind of what we're seeing right now. So it really is like they've built on every single ransomware takedown over the last 6 months to the last 2 years, and incorporated all of those policies into kind of one full blitz approach on the LockBit.
Thank you, Alex. A couple more words. I believe that yesterday was a Cyber D-Day. In the past 4 years, we, the threat intelligence community, brought intelligence to our law enforcement partners, discovered new ransomware techniques, affiliates, involved human intelligence into all this with almost no effect. I myself, as threat intelligence analyst in the past, I was frustrated. We discovered so much, but there is nothing could be done with it. There is no action. LockBit is still online. They still attack hospitals. Even if we know who the guy is, we can't really do anything because he lives in a country that we can't reach, right? With this law enforcement action yesterday, it all changed. People used to think law enforcement was a toothless shark. No, believe me, they have very strong and sharp teeth. With that operation, they just torn apart the largest and the most significant ransomware and prolific ransomware group that ever existed. I'm very happy. Let's celebrate and remember February 20th as a Cyber D-Day.
Yep, exactly. And to your point, Dmitry, D-Day wasn't the end of the war, but it was the start of the end. And so we still have a lot of work to do ahead of us. We can't let our guard down. But this is a good start, and we build on this progress and go forward. I think that that's a great analogy. We didn't make this. I wish we had. I wish we had made this image, but this was made by law enforcement. And I think to kind of build on what Alex and Dmitry were saying, one of the things that I think is really interesting about this is basically the open mocking of LockBit as part of this takedown. Yes, there's a lot of seriousness here. There's a lot of cases that are going to be made, but NCA is just like, we're going to laugh at you because it's true. LockBit's been banned from exploit. They've been banned from XSS. And now they've been banned from their own site. And there's even one of the teasers in the tiles is NCA going to reveal who LockBit Sup is? And so I think there's not just mocking him, but making him sweat a little bit. Though he'll deny it, they're making him sweat a little bit as far as what all do we know? And, and I've pointed this out before. I know that ransomware actors think they have really good OPSEC, but it's one thing to have OPSEC against companies like us or Mandiant or CrowdStrike or any of the others. When you have GCHQ and NSA looking at your ass, you don't have enough OPSEC to protect against that. And that's the situation where these ransomware actors, whether they want to acknowledge it or not, find themselves now. They have every intelligence agency in the world with a whole lot of money to find out who they are. And we're starting to see the fruits of that. Go ahead to the next slide, Dimitri. And that gets to this point that, are we going to find out in the next couple of days who LockBit Sup is, or are they that $10 million reward's been out there? Are they going to announce that they're paying out some or all of that to somebody, and who's it going to be? If I'm LockBit Sup, I'm really worried about how well I've treated my neighbors and my friends and the cashier down at the grocery store, because if I've been a jerk to anybody in the last couple of years, they may want that $10 million. And doesn't matter where that person who's turning them in is located, the governments can get them their money. So we'll, obviously we'll see in the next couple of days what we get from that. And then go ahead to the last slide. And the question that always gets asked after something like this is, what are we going to see next? What is LockBit Sup going to do? And really, there have been three models that we've dealt with. There's retire and, go live, in a hut near the Black Sea and, keep all the money that hasn't been seized and just enjoy your life. That doesn't happen very often. It happens occasionally, but it doesn't happen very often. We may see them trying to return with LockBit 4.0 or 3.0, and that's kind of what Revel tried to do, and that really didn't work out too well for them. But the other thing we could see is we could see them kind of breaking up the way after Conti broke up, and then members of Conti started Hive and Royal and these others. They may go make little LockBits. Right now, what we're seeing is down at the bottom. LockBit is very vociferously saying, no, I'm not owned, definitely not owned. Please stop saying that I'm owned, because I'm in full control here. And they're not. This is a really, really good takedown. They've acknowledged in chats with VX Underground that they were definitely owned, although they misnamed the agency that took them down. But they've been owned. And it'll be interesting to see whether or not affiliates trust them going forward, because there's a lot of disruption here, and I think, I think there's going to be a lot of suspicion. I know that's what happened with Alfie as they're trying to reconstitute. Not a lot of people have a lot of faith in the threat actors behind Alfie in being able to build a secure ransomware as a service model. So it'll be interesting to see what's going on. I know we've talked for almost 30 minutes here. I also know there are a ton of questions waiting for us. So I think we're going to shut up now unless Alex or Dimitri, you have last comments, and let's take some questions.
I just kind of want to comment on this slide really quickly in terms of kind of where I see this going based on precedent. I don't see a return as LockBit 4.0 as being likely. I think this is way too comprehensive of a takedown. I think sowing distrust amongst your affiliates and amongst the cyber criminal underground period is like a death sentence. But then having sanctions against your affiliates, who's going to want to pay out a LockBit affiliate LockBit period, if there's the potential for compliance failure by proxy, right? Like, who is going to want to work with LockBit knowing that there are active arrest warrants, there are indictments that are unsealed, under seal, the fact that there are decryption tools out there, and law enforcement is openly alluding to the fact that private sector entities are going to share information about future developmental builds of the LockBit builder, of SteelBit, of LockBit bespoke tools. They've disclosed a lot of information we see the report from Trend Micro coming about like a future developmental build of LockBit. Who is going to want to work with LockBit as an affiliate barring a total reset, an entire rebrand, it might be impossible to return as LockBit 4.0. We might see something along the lines of Evil Core, where it will pull back almost entirely. It will go under very short-term rebrands or a long-term rebrand under covers, but it's not going to be on the forums. It's not going to be on social media. This is going to be something that is going to be really based on indicators, based on incident response cases, right? Like we might see that instead of a 4.0.
Thank you, Alex. And I agree. It's likely going to be a lot of little LockBits, because I can't see this brand recovering from this fall. Just simply, they lost trust of their affiliates. Plus, they exposed all the internal stuff that affiliates thought was kept in secret. Plus, US government sanctioned that brand. Now, if LockBit keeps recovering somehow and attacking new organizations, everyone knows they're sanctioned. Nobody's going to pay them. So why would affiliates risk of not paying because of sanctions? And instead of just picking a newer brand that works just as well as LockBit. So I don't see them coming back and recovering from this blow.
I was looking through the Q&A while we were going through the presentation, and so I've been able to assimilate some into buckets. And I think one of the things that folks are certainly interested in, if we have this information, is, do you have a sense of like the scope of the size of LockBit as an organization? And I know that there were questions too around, is there a list of victims that have been impacted by LockBit? And also any idea around the amount of money in the Lock Crypto wallet? So I know that's 3 questions, but they kind of all go together in terms of like the size and the scope of the damage that this organization has done.
Thank you, Maggie. I would like to start first, if you allow me, regarding the victimology. Recorded Future collected all posts that were made on LockBit 1, LockBit 2, and LockBit 3 blogs. Moreover, we have some human intelligence to refine these automated collections. So we are very well aware of what happened on the public. There is another part which is hidden from us, the private deals that were committed without any public posts. So that will be known through this backend that law enforcement has access to now. Moreover, through 2,300 victims, we also looked at, because it starts with a threat. There is a victim, we threaten to leak your data unless you pay us. So we captured this. Then next step, when they leak files, we look at the directories, we look at the archives and files, and collect metadata from them. So this is a treasure trove of data because it points to the third-party victims. We have this in a Recorded Future platform and available to our customers and partners. But blockchain analysis, I think it's a little bit further step. And Alan and Alex, I'll pass it to you.
I wish we had Jackie on the call to answer that question. Jackie, if you're there, go ahead and reply in the Q&A, please. But I mean, LockBit was massive, but Alex and Dimitri, I'd really like your insight into this. The focus is on LockBit support, but I think the core lock group was bigger, but I also think he relied heavily on contractors. And so I don't think it was as big as like Hive or Conti was in terms of the core group, because I think he relied so heavily on contractors, which he tended to screw over and not pay, which is why we got the 1 leak of the LockBit code. Even, there's the old saying, there's no honor among thieves, but even for ransomware actors, I always got the feeling that LockBit sup was scummier than even most ransomware actors. I don't know. What was y'all's impression?
Yeah. So with what I can say about the LockBit structure, the hierarchy, you are 100% correct, right? So LockBit outsourced and relied on contractors heavily. It usually relied on individuals that were solicited or had reputations on underground forums, right? LockBit Sup is kind of, we talk a lot about the forum as like the driver of cyber criminal culture, of cyber criminal actions, but like really LockBit is inseparable from forum culture, particularly on XSS. Relied heavily on contractors and relied heavily on affiliates. Didn't really rely much on professional teams. Did have professional teams, much like Conti, much like Hive, but the affiliate crews that we see, so all of those accounts that I showed you for LockBit 3.0, the majority of those are individuals that are applying to the LockBit ransomware as a service program, that are putting deposits in, that are filling out applications, that are being vouched for by individuals that are already affiliates or that are contractors with LockBit to begin with. So, you know, the scope and scale of LockBit as an organization is sprawling, but the actual development team and the professional team is rather small relative to other ransomware as a service groups. With regards to the question about blockchain analysis and cryptocurrency, be patient on that one. That is actually being released on Friday morning by law enforcement, so we don't have that information now, but I'm sure every researcher is going to want to look at it come Friday morning. And then in terms of victimology, much like Dimitri said, like the only other thing that I can weigh in on is, yes, we have about 2,300 publicly disclosed victims, many more behind the scenes that either paid ransom, didn't pay ransom, were never disclosed, encrypted, and there was never a negotiation period. You know, there's a lot of resources that you can look into if you or someone you know or an organization you know has been impacted. If you're located in the US, there's the Internet Complaint Center, IC3. If you're located in the UK, contact the NCA for information about LockBit. There are a number of open source third-party aggregator sources for victims, period, with that kind of look through domain names that are disclosed by dark web extortion blogs. But there are a lot of resources out there. Defer to law enforcement if you or an organization you know has been impacted by LockBit. They're openly ready to help. They have back-end access. They know who was victimized by LockBit at this point. Reach out to law enforcement at this point. It's probably your best course of action.
Alex, to that point, you're talking about how the structure is set up. There was a question much earlier around, are there any indications that there are LockBit ties to state governments, so APTs or actual states?
This is a difficult question to answer, and I'll preface this by saying we don't know. Like we don't know. That's okay. There's been a lot of speculation with regards to the Russian cybercriminal underground. We talk a lot about the unwritten rule about targeting Russia. Ransomware groups generally are not investigated, are not indicted within Russia if they don't target Russian entities, which is why you never see ransomware attacks generally against Russian entities or entities in the former Soviet Union, the Commonwealth of Independent States. Most ransomwares will actually have anti-CIS strings in them that will kind of self-destruct if they detect Russian or any of the languages of the CIS on a keyboard of an infected device. This has long led to speculation about state involvement in ransomware operations, whether it is direct cooperation or whether it's tacit approval, allowing ransomware to exist within Russia's borders or allowing it to coexist for plausible deniability purposes and operate on behalf of APTs. We don't really have that information, but for more kind of information on that theory in general from previous case studies, looking at groups like Conti, Evil Core, and so forth, I would highly recommend looking at previous recorded future public reports, Dark Covenant and Dark Covenant 2.0, which explain this in depth, explain how the Russian state and Russian law enforcement allows ransomware to operate. LockBit, likely if they operate in Russia, is no different from those groups I just mentioned, and they operate with the tacit approval of the Russian state. Whether or not that is an actual connection, whether or not they're operating on behalf of law enforcement or intelligence agency, we cannot say. But it is important to note that there is a predominant theory that this is allowed to happen, as soft power projection, as a form of an underground economy, black market. But I would refer to those two reports, Dark Covenant and Dark Covenant 2.0, which you can find on the Recorded Future website.
What do you, Alan, this is for you and Dimitri as well. Do you see this takedown materially impacting any changes in ransomware trends going into, continuing into 2024 or farther out?
Yeah, I mean, LockBit for the last several, at least the last year, probably 2 years, has accounted for about 25% of all publicly reported victims. So at the very least, there's going to be a short-term disruption in the number of ransomware attacks. The affiliates will very quickly go sign up with somebody else, but there are fewer and fewer open ransomware as a service offerings. You have groups like Alfie that are closed and require a much stricter vetting process than LockBit did. Now, there are smaller ransomware as a service offerings out there that we may see grow because of this that are open, but it's going to take time for the affiliates to move and continue carrying out attacks. But remember, the initial access brokers, the identity thieves and all that are still out there collecting that information. So the affiliates can glom onto something and find a new ransomware, they will quickly move on to that. I will say, we use the analogy of whack-a-mole a lot. You knock one down and there's another one that pops up. What I think operations like this and Hive and Alfie are doing is they're taking that whack-a-mole and they're making the whack-a-mole board smaller. So yes, they're still popping up, but we're seeing fewer and fewer main, for the last couple of years, the whack-a-mole board has been getting bigger and bigger as new ransomware as a service offerings and new ransomware groups kind of kept popping up, and we're starting to see a shrinkage of that, we hope. Obviously it's going to be a few months before we know for sure whether there are long-term effects here, but in the short term, I do think we'll see disruption. And if you're seeing this disruption, you're seeing this slowdown, please, that doesn't mean go on vacation. It means take the time to improve your defenses, patch the things you've been meaning to patch, get your identity and access management program together, find out where all of your data is and make sure you're securing that. Please, please, please.
Thank you, Alan. I would like to add this. Affiliates are in damage control. LockBit was just enabler for these hundreds of hackers, affiliates. I'm well aware that one affiliate has access to at least 2-3 different panels, different brands, LockBit and others. I'm not going to name all of them now. What happens when one is going down, they still have 2 other tools they could use. They're still hungry for money. They saw how much money they can make, and they're not stopping. They'll keep hacking. They'll keep locking the organizations worldwide. Today, maybe they're scared. Like, what's next? Will their name appear on Department of Justice or FBI websites? They probably will slow down for a week or so. But as I said, there's so much money to be made. They will keep hacking. So listen to Alan. Patch your vulnerabilities and identity and access management. It's very important because 63% of the attacks start from compromised employee.
I like this one question that came in that you can each chime in on. Curious how people who are members of ransomware groups, do they also have normal lives? Like, for example, do they have full-time jobs outside of their malicious activity or families, or do they just ransom all the time?
I can start here. Absolutely, they have a lifetime. And when they work at night and hack, then they sleep during the day. There is still some PM hours when they wake up and go to restaurants or the gym or even team up with their colleagues. So they love very expensive cars. They love very expensive food. They like to brag about it. It's really hard to do this in Russia, even though they can have this Ferrari, but everyone's looking at you. So some of them travel, and that's when we catch them. Every time they go outside of Russia, they're going down. Alex?
Yeah, I mean, Dimitri's 100% correct. They do have lives. We know from previous cases. I mean, look at the Thanos ransomware builder from Venezuela, who was a neurosurgeon or a heart surgeon. You know, we know that they're doctors, they're dentists, they're academics, they're information technology workers that moonlight as cyber criminals, and it fueled a lot of speculation back in February 2022 when Russia invaded Ukraine. We see this exodus of information technology workers from Russia, which leads to this momentary short-term decline in not only like initial access brokerage and data leak activities on Russian language forums, but we see a dip in overall ransomware victimology, not only in the volume, but in the tempo of attacks, right? They have jobs, they have lives, they have families. Most of them do this, you know, some of them do it for desperation purposes, for socioeconomic purposes. Some of them do it, you know, there's some good resources actually on the LockBit portal that were set up by the NCA about early intervention programs and the causes of cybercrime and why affiliates join ransomware groups. Some of it do it for the love of hacking and information technology, period. Some of them do it like as part of a challenge. Just because they are cyber criminals doesn't mean outside of cybercrime they are not people that have jobs, people that have lives, people that have hobbies. A lot of them play video games. Like we know that from previous cases, right? We see a lot of them are involved in like esports. A lot of them are involved in like cryptocurrency trading as a day job. They have jobs, they have lives. Like this is just more or less a part-time job relative to their full-time lives.
Yeah, and Alex, you did leave off the important one. Some of them do it because they're just giant dicks, and you know, are evil. But we see this with the researchers that that have contact with them. So many of the ransomware actors that researchers come in contact with want to share memes, want to, you know, talk about video games. Like they want to be friends with the researchers, which is why I can't do it, because I just want to punch them all. But they do want to ingratiate themselves, and you know, a lot of the ransomware actors are the same age as the researchers that are researching them, so there is a lot in common. You know, same sci-fi, same manga, same, you know, anime shows and Star Wars and Marvel and all of these other things that they have in common. So yes, it is a different. They are similar, just with different things they do. And I'm sorry, Maggie, for taking our webinar from PG to R. I hope that's okay.
Just fine. I think one of the questions, and I don't know how much insights we have into this, is in the operation itself, do we know which agencies from US and UK, or the approach that they took to kind of infiltrate and take down? I don't know that we do actually, but I wanted to ask.
I would go to an extent to say that we don't know that yet, and to have restraint until that's kind of disclosed, because it's likely to be very technical. This is a long-term operation that's likely still ongoing, given the amount of cases that are out there right now and kind of what we alerted to earlier, that there's more to come. We don't really know exactly when this began. We don't know how this whole process took place in terms of infiltration. We can make speculation as to likely used human intelligence methods, likely used informants. Like we can talk about all of that stuff, but without specifics, there's really no one except governments that can speak on authority right now and say this is exactly how this operation happened, outside of speculation.
Government will never disclose their confidential sources, but I'm 100% sure there is a human intelligence analyst who poked at LockBit, who even became affiliates, who discovered the backend URLs, who led law enforcement towards this action. So it all starts with human intelligence analysts.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of speculation right now about exploiting vulnerability in PHP, and LockBit has even said that that is where they got in. that underestimates the power of law enforcement. Like, law enforcement doesn't need to hack into a server that's located in a jurisdiction they control. They can just issue a warrant and say, give us this server. So while there are some very talented and very skilled hackers that work for the government, that's not necessarily the tools that they need to use in order to gain access to these servers. And to Alex's point, and Dimitri's point, we don't know for sure. We can speculate. It's up to law enforcement as to whether or not they decide that they want to share that information, and I don't think they will.
Something that I kind of want to talk about with regards to the PHP vulnerability, because this is kind of circulating a lot of information, misinformation, speculation on this. There's kind of an underlying point here in that criminals are liars. Criminals are not authoritative sources. In terms of reporting anything or making analysis about anything when the criminal is the source, it's going to jeopardize the integrity of your analysis. That might be true. They might have exploited a vulnerability in PHP, as LockBit said. We don't really know, and it won't be confirmed yet. Don't take them at their word just yet until it is corroborated either by private sector researchers or by law enforcement. Criminals are liars. We saw with the NCA press conference yesterday where, despite all of the guarantees about deleting data, victims that paid still had data on LockBit backend servers that was being re-extorted, resold, leaked on dark web forums. Don't ever take them at their word, especially a multinational, transnational criminal enterprise. Whether or not that vulnerability was exploited, we don't know. Whether or not something is happening behind the scenes that LockBit then announces on social media, on a forum, announces to VX Underground. It's really interesting stuff. It fuels a lot of speculation when qualified in a very measured way. But if not qualified with those, if not given those disclaimers, it can get really messy really quickly.
Thank you for that. I think the one question I do, and I don't know, depending on how long we discuss this, it may be the last question, but we talk on this slide here about what does LockBit do next? But let's kind of shift the question a bit. Who or what is positioned to become the next LockBit? Alan, you said that they're responsible for about 25% of known ransomware attacks. So is there the next up and comer that we should be keeping an eye out for?
It's a good question. I think we may not know who the next up and comer is, because a lot of groups have gone to a much more closed model, specifically because of the takedown. So if you look at a group like Play does not allow a lot of open affiliates in there, and they've been operating at sort of low-key numbers for a while, and not trying to expand. I don't know, Alex or Dimitri, do either of you have a sense of who might be sort of the next one to step in and try and fill the void?
I mean, I'll just quickly weigh in and say I don't think we have the information nor the time yet. We don't have the hindsight and we don't kind of have the foresight to tell, given how ongoing this is. I think, what we're going to see is very similar to what happened with the Conti teams, right? When we see Conti splinter off, when we see the different Conti teams form Black Basta, form Royal, we see Xeon's crew kind of move around to LockBit and to other different ransomware as a service programs. I think we're going to see very similar. If this doesn't return as LockBit 4.0, which I don't think it will, and we get this little LockBits situation, I think it will take time to know who the next player is going to be. They will have to make an impact on the threat landscape, in a demonstrable way that gets the attention of journalists and researchers alike. This takes time. I don't think it's something that you can spin up overnight. We're likely looking at several weeks to months, even a year out before we can make a determination as to who the next top dog in the ransomware as a service industry is going to be, if ransomware service even exists at this point next year, given how all of these groups are closed now.
I will be watching Recorded Future platform, our ransomware dashboard, And if we see trends changing, I'm going to definitely share with you all this and become a customer for Recorded Future. You'll have access to this data. You'll have access to Recorded Future ransomware solutions. Protect your organization today. There is a way.
All right. Fantastic. Any other parting thoughts that you want to leave our participants with, Alex, Dimitri, or Alan?
As the world's only certified ransomware sommelier, if you are looking for a wine pairing with the Takedown, Roger Daltrey has a champagne. So I recommend pairing the Roger Daltrey champagne with the Hustong Boris the Spider. And you will properly celebrate today.
Fantastic. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us. You will get a copy of the recording emailed to you as a result of registering. Have a wonderful rest of your week, and catch y'all next time.
Thank you all.